Hey everyone, Emily Jashinsky, culture editor at the Federalist here. We're going to talk about Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. He's also the founder and CEO of Square, a billionaire several times over, who just, it was announced, donated $10 million to Boston University's Center for Anti-Racist Research. That is, of course, the center that was founded earlier this summer by how to be an anti-racist author, Ibram X. Kendi. This is interesting because Kendi is explicitly an anti-capitalist. So Dorsey's donation, which is going along with big tech's bankrolling of these radical leftist anti-capitalist social justice movements, it's completely incoherent. It's like oil and water. How do these two philosophies mix? Well, they don't. And that's what makes it interesting that a capitalist like Jack Dorsey and others would continue to donate to these expressly anti-capitalist movements like Kendi. Why is that? Why are these corporatists bankrolling anti-corporate, anti-capitalist organizations? I mean, think about it. Without the free market system that exists in this country, Jack Dorsey's products would never have been successful. His success is enabled by the free market system and by the capitalist system. So why now is he donating money to organizations that would seek to create a world in which his success is impossible? Presumably, Jack Dorsey thinks that his products make the world a better place. If that's the case, why would he then go give his money to organizations that want to create a world in which he wouldn't have the ability to harness the power of the free market to create products that make the world a better place? It actually makes absolutely no sense. And Dorsey isn't alone. He's also, by the way, donated some money to Black Lives Matter over the course of this summer. Black Lives Matter is run by quote trained Marxists, and they're open about that. And they've gotten a lot of corporate donations. Here's the question. Do these corporations, are they seeing these donations basically as PR expenses? I think in a lot of cases, yes. Jack Dorsey has pledged to give away about 28% of his wealth. And he actually keeps a spreadsheet of all of the organizations he's donated to. It's live. It's on Google Docs. You can just click on the link on his Twitter. You can see all the organizations he's donated to, how much money he's given them. Jack Dorsey that's a big chunk of your wealth, right? If you're, if you have any net worth, 28% is a big chunk of your wealth, and especially to give it away in a short amount of time. But Jack Dorsey can give away 28% of his wealth and remain a multi-billionaire tech entrepreneur who is now anti-capitalist. Is he actually anti-capitalist? I don't know. There are two ways to look at this. We can look at this as though we can look at this with the assumption that corporate America is bankrolling these anti-capitalist social justice movements, as I said, as a public relations expense. Just in the same way that they would spend on PR efforts, they're saying by donating to these organizations are never going to create a Marxist revolution. We're never going to topple the capitalist system, so we might as well throw them some money and look good to the public while doing so. I think that's one way to assume that this is being approached. The other way is that they want to embrace these they want to sincerely embrace cultural leftism, because the millennials like myself who graduated from schools that taught them the progressive or bigot binary, where you're either a full progressive or you're a bigot, which, by the way, is reinforced in Ibram X. Kendi's book, which I'm sure will be assigned en masse on campuses, not actually on campuses, but in virtual classrooms this fall. So because these corporations are populated with these people who pressure CEOs and who are in some cases actually CEOs themselves, I think there's a sincere interest in, quote, social justice. But I don't think they fully are willing to embrace a philosophy that would undercut their life's work and the system that enabled it. That's where this is really interesting. And that's where you look at somebody like Jack Dorsey, who is one of the most powerful people in the world. He is one of the most powerful people in the world, and he controls speech on a very powerful platform. That's the other part of the story that's problematic. if Jack Dorsey is embracing the Ibrahim-Kendi vision, as BU said actually in its news release, let me actually find the quote. Dorsey's gift is part of an outpouring of donations from the high-tech industry to racial justice organizations in recent months, obviously. BU's president called the donation, quote, a tribute to Kendi and his vision for anti-racism and for the vision of building a center around scholarship and policy that actually has a positive impact going forward. Okay, so Jack Dorsey is bolstering the far-left academic system that is sending these graduates out into the working world and shaping it into the version of this sort of like censorious far-left college campus culture. So there's that by donating to a center at BU. But there's also this idea that like he donated it with no strings attached. BU brags about, quote, no strings attached to the donation in their news release. And they say that's evidence that he has given his, quote, unqualified support for Ibrahim-Kendi's vision on anti-racism. Ibrahim-Kendi's vision about anti-racism is that there's, quote, no neutrality. If you are neutral, you are racist. The opposite of racist is not racist, it's anti-racist. And so when you set up a system like that, it's exactly this progressive or bigot binary. So Jack Dorsey does, in fact, fully embrace Ibrahim-Kendi's vision, quote, vision, as it relates to racial justice. And he applies that vision to the speech policy at Twitter, which already targets people unfairly, especially as it relates to matters of conversation about biological sex. If Jack Dorsey applies the Ibrahim-Kendi definition of racism to Twitter speech policies, there's going to be extremely narrow restrictions on speech on the platform. And so what we're seeing right now is a powerful elite CEO who does have a lot of power to shape our conversations politically. We are seeing him embrace these expansive, radical definitions of terms like racism, and you can look at what the left does with the definitions of the word white supremacy or violence. I have an article up on the Federalist about that. They operate in very different definitions than the rest of the country, which is confusing for people because genuine, decent, non-racist people are called racist, and that is upsetting to them, and it creates a lot of cultural conflict in this country. So that's the other element of this. On the one hand, Jack Dorsey is representative of a broader trend of corporations bankrolling anti-capitalist movements that would put them out of business. Ibrahim-Kendi, by the way, is lavishing Jack Dorsey in praise in the BU news release. What did he say? It's just fascinating because he's heaping praise on a multi-billionaire who continues to use the, quote, capitalist system. He says, it's just amazing that Jack would recognize and decide to invest in our center with no strings attached, particularly at this early date, and to be among the group of organizations that he's supporting is truly an honor. Well, let's pull this quote from Ibrahim-Kendi. In order to truly be anti-racist, you also have to truly be anti-capitalist. Does he believe that a multi-billionaire tech CEO is, quote, truly anti-capitalist? Of course he doesn't. He's still, though, taking his money and lavishing praise on him. And Jack Dorsey, by Ibrahim-Kendi's logical formulation, if he is not truly anti-capitalist, his work is racist, because remember, there's no neutrality. So by Ibrahim-Kendi's own definitions and own logical formulations, he just took the money of somebody who is actively involved in racial injustice and will continue to defend his businesses that are capitalist corporations and use the free market system to further what Kendi would call a racist system, because it's a capitalist system. This makes no sense. It is like oil and water. You have to wonder which of all of these options that Jack Dorsey actually embraces. Is he somebody who perceives this as a PR expense? Is he somebody who really truly believes in cultural leftism, but only to the extent where it doesn't involve him giving up his wealth and his businesses and disowning his entire life's work? There really aren't many options in this situation. So keep paying attention to how all these corporations are bankrolling far left anti-capitalist movements. It is an important trend.